The deafening screech of tires against asphalt pierced the morning air. Emma Reed's heart leapt into her throat as she watched her father's antique bookstore sign crash down mere inches from a gleaming black Lamborghini. Time seemed to freeze as dust particles danced in the sunlight. "What the hell?" A deep voice thundered from inside the luxury vehicle. Emma clutched her simple cotton dress, knuckles white. This couldn't be happening today of all days. Not when her father was in the hospital and the bank had just sent their final eviction notice. The car door swung open with calculated precision. First, a handcrafted Italian leather shoe appeared, then another, until the full form of the man emerged, tall, imposing, and radiating the kind of confidence that could only come from obscene wealth. "Do you have any idea how much this car costs?" His voice was surprisingly controlled, almost amused. Emma's gaze traveled from the barely scratched car to the man's face. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in dollars and cents, and dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than her monthly rent. "I'm so sorry, Mr. she stammered. "Thorne. Dominic Thorne." He adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease. "And you are the owner of this?" He gestured vaguely at the crumbling bookstore. "Establishment?" "Emma Reed. My father owns it, but he's currently indisposed." Dominic's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He pulled out his phone, snapped several photos of the scene, and then made a call. "Harrison, I need information on a Reed's Rare Books on Fifth Avenue. Yes, everything. Particularly their financial situation." He ended the call and turned, his attention back to Emma. "Insurance information, please." Emma's stomach dropped. "We don't exactly have comprehensive insurance at the moment." Something flickered in Dominic's eyes, not anger, but opportunity. He stepped closer, his cologne enveloping her senses, sandalwood and something distinctly powerful. "Let me guess. You're drowning in debt, barely keeping afloat, and now this." He gestured to the fallen sign. "How much do you owe?" "Excuse me?" Emma's cheeks flushed. "That's rather personal." "Everything is business, Ms. Reed. Nothing personal." His phone chimed. He glanced at it and smiled wolfishly. $287,540 in debt. Your father took out loans against the property to fund experimental treatments for your mother's cancer. Admirable, but financially ruinous. Emma felt exposed, vulnerable. "How did you—" "I own the bank that's about to foreclose on you." His revelation landed like a bomb in the quiet street. Emma's world spun. This couldn't be happening. She had been making calls all week, begging for extensions, attempting to sell rare volumes, all to buy just a little more time. "I have a proposition for you," Dominic said, sliding his sunglasses into place, obscuring those calculating eyes. "Meet me at the Pierre tonight at 8. Penthouse suite. We'll discuss alternative payment arrangements." Before Emma could respond, he was back in his car, the engine purring to life like an exotic beast. "Don't be late, Ms. Reed," he called through the open window. "I detest tardiness almost as much as I detest unpaid debts." The Lamborghini disappeared around the corner, leaving Emma standing amidst the rubble of her family's legacy, clutching a business card embossed with gold lettering. Dominic Thorne, CEO, Thorne Enterprises. Where dreams are built and bought. Her phone rang. The hospital. Her father's condition had worsened. With trembling fingers, Emma made a decision. Tonight she would meet the devil in his penthouse and see what deal he had to offer. Emma stood outside the Pierre Hotel, her reflection distorted in the revolving gold doors. She barely recognized herself in the only formal dress she owned, a simple black number she'd worn to her mother's funeral 2 years ago. Her hand clutched a worn leather satchel containing the bookstore's financial records, a desperate attempt to appear professional. "Welcome to the Pierre, miss. May I assist you?" The doorman's polite smile faltered slightly as he assessed her appearance. "I'm here to see Mr. Thorne. Penthouse suite. The words felt foreign on her tongue. The doorman's eyebrows shot up, but he recovered quickly. Of course. Please follow me. The elevator ride to the top floor stretched into eternity. Emma's mind raced through possible scenarios, none of them reassuring. What kind of alternative payment did a man who had everything want from someone who had nothing? The penthouse doors opened silently, revealing a sprawling space overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights like stars fallen to earth. The decor was understated luxury, all clean lines and materials that whispered, rather than shouted their value. Ms. Reed, 8 o'clock exactly. I'm impressed. Dominic emerged from an adjacent room, his tailored suit, replaced by dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe. In this more casual attire, he looked younger, almost approachable, until you reached his eyes. They remained sharply focused, assessing. Would you like a drink? He gestured toward a bar stocked with bottles whose labels Emma didn't recognize. No, thank you. I'd prefer to discuss business. A smile ghosted across his face. Direct. I appreciate that. He motioned toward a seating area. Please sit. Emma perched on the edge of a leather sofa that could comfortably seat 6. She opened her satchel. I've brought our financial records. I believe if we restructure the debt, I'm not interested in restructuring. Dominic cut her off, settling into an armchair across from her. I've spent the afternoon learning everything about you, Emma Reed. 27 years old. Master's degree in literature from NYU. Abandoned a promising career in publishing to help your father after your mother's death. Loyal, determined, stubborn. Emma stiffened. You've been investigating me? I never enter negotiations uninformed. He leaned forward. I have a contract for you. He slid a document across the glass coffee table. The title page read simply, Personal Assistant Agreement. You want me to be your assistant? Emma couldn't mask her confusion. My current assistant is leaving for maternity leave. I need someone intelligent, adaptable, and desperate enough to tolerate my particular working style. And the bookstore? My father's debt? Forgiven. Completely. Additionally, your father will receive treatment from the best oncologists in my private medical facility. Emma's breath caught. What's the catch, Mr. Thorne? Dominic, he corrected. The catch, as you put it, is that you'll be at my disposal 24/7 for 1 year. You'll live in the guest suite of my residence, travel with me, and essentially structure your life around mine. That sounds like indentured servitude. Dominic laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face momentarily. It's employment, Emma. Highly compensated employment with unusual requirements. He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. I'm not an easy man to work for. I'm demanding, exacting, and, as you've already observed, arrogant. He turned to face her. But I'm also fair. Complete this contract, and not only will your father's debt be erased, but you'll receive a reference that will open any door in publishing you desire. Emma's mind raced. A year of her life in exchange for her father's financial freedom and health care. She thought of the bookstore, her childhood sanctuary filled with stories of adventures and sacrifices. Why me? She finally asked. You could hire anyone with actual executive assistant experience. Dominic's expression turned enigmatic. Let's just say you intrigue me. Your background in literature gives you a perspective my usual corporate drones lack. And there's something refreshingly authentic about you. He returned to his seat. So, what will it be, Emma? Return to your crumbling bookstore and watch it disappear, or step into my world for 12 months and secure your father's future. Emma's fingers traced the embossed letterhead of the contract. Behind Dominic's shoulder, through the penthouse windows, she could see the lights of the hospital where her father lay fighting for his life. If I agree, when would I start? A victorious smile curved Dominic's lips. Immediately. Tonight. Tonight? Emma echoed in disbelief. First lesson about me. I don't waste time. He produced a pen from his pocket, offering it to her. Your life changes with one signature, Emma. The question is, are you brave enough to sign? The pen hovered between them, a bridge between two worlds. Emma's hand trembled as she signed her name. The scratch of the pen against paper seemed to echo in the penthouse's vastness. One signature, her entire life redirected. Welcome to Thorn. Enterprises, Dominic said, taking the contract back. He pressed a button on his phone. Harrison, send up the boxes. Boxes? Emma asked. Your new wardrobe. I can't have my personal assistant dressed. His eyes flicked over her funeral dress. Inappropriately. Before Emma could form a retort, the elevator doors opened and a parade of staff entered carrying garment bags and boxes emblazoned with designer logos she'd only seen in magazines. How did you know I'd say yes? She demanded. Dominic's mouth quirked. I didn't, but I'm always prepared for success. He gestured toward a door. That's your suite. Get changed. We have a dinner meeting in 30 minutes. Dinner? Tonight? But my father has already been transferred to Mount Sinai's VIP wing. My medical team is reviewing his case as we speak. Dominic scrolled through his phone. Dr. Patel will call with updates. Your phone won't work for secure communications. He handed her a sleek new device. This one will. Emma stood, frozen, the reality of her decision crashing over her like a wave. 30 minutes, Emma, Dominic reminded her, his tone softening fractionally. You'll find everything you need in your suite. The suite was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, while a sitting area and desk occupied another. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a view that stole Emma's breath. The bathroom gleamed with marble and gold fixtures. On the bed lay an array of dresses. Emma ran her fingers over fabrics she'd never touched before. Silk, cashmere, fine wool. A note card sat propped against a jewelry box. Choose wisely. First impressions matter. DT. 28 minutes later, Emma emerged in a midnight blue sheath dress that fit as if made for her, which, she realized with a start, it probably had been. The staff had unpacked her meager belongings and arranged them precisely in the massive closet, already dwarfed by her new appropriate wardrobe. Dominic looked up from his laptop, his expression unreadable as he assessed her. Better, he said finally. The pearls were a good choice. Conservative but elegant. Emma's hand went to the simple strand at her throat. They were my mother's. The only thing I kept. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. We're meeting with Japanese investors. They're traditional, so follow my lead. Speak when spoken to. Smile, but not too much. He closed his laptop. Your literature background might actually be useful. They appreciate cultural references. In the elevator down, Emma studied her new employer. Do you always micromanage your assistants' appearances? Image is currency in my world. You're an extension of me now. His gaze lingered on her face. You clean up well, by the way. Was that a compliment or another assessment of your property? Dominic's laugh was unexpected. Neither, just an observation. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Ready for your new life to begin? The restaurant was exclusive, hidden behind an unmarked door. No menus in sight, just a procession of exquisite dishes accompanied by sake, served in cups that Emma suspected were museum-worthy. To her surprise, the investors addressed questions to her after learning of her literature background. The conversation shifted to Japanese poetry, and Emma found herself discussing the merits of different translations of ancient texts. Dominic watched her, surprised. When she quoted a haiku in the original Japanese, the oldest investor actually smiled. The first, break in his stoic demeanor all evening. Later, in the car returning to the pier, Silence stretched between them. "You speak Japanese," Dominic finally said. Not a question. "My mother was half Japanese. She taught me." Emma gazed out the window at the glittering city. "She used to read me stories in both languages." "You didn't mention that skill on any resume." "You didn't ask. You were too busy investigating my debts." She turned to face him. "Don't look so surprised, Dominic. Not everything about a person can be discovered through financial records." For once, he seemed without a ready response. The car glided to a stop in front of the hotel. "Get some rest," he said as they entered the penthouse elevator. "Tomorrow we fly to Paris, 6 a.m. departure." "Paris? I need to see my father first." Dominic's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "The car will take you to the hospital at 5. You have 30 minutes there before we leave for the airport." As Emma turned toward her suite, he called after her. "Emma, you did well tonight. The Nakamuras rarely engage with newcomers. You impressed them." The admission seemed to cost him something. Emma nodded, too exhausted for verbal sparring. In her suite, she sank onto the bed, still in her borrowed finery. Her old life had ended with a signature. Her new one had begun with a dinner where she'd temporarily rendered Dominic Thorne speechless. A small victory, but significant. As exhaustion claimed her, Emma realized that surviving a year with this man would require many such victories, and a heart carefully guarded against his unexpected moments of almost humanity. Paris in spring should have been magical. Instead, Emma experienced it through the tinted windows of limousines and the sterile conference rooms of Thorne Enterprises' European headquarters. 3 days into their trip, she had yet to see the Eiffel Tower except as a distant spire from her hotel suite window. "Schedule update," Dominic announced, striding into the anteroom of his office where Emma had set up her workstation. "The board dinner is canceled. Apparently Dumont has food poisoning." Emma glanced up from her laptop where she'd been organizing Dominic's impossibly complicated calendar. "Should I send flowers? Perhaps a get-well hamper?" "You think like a bookshop owner's daughter," Dominic remarked, but without malice. "Dumont is trying to block my acquisition of Neurotech. His illness is strategic, not bacterial." 3 weeks into her employment, Emma was learning to read Dominic's micro-expressions. Currently, irritation mingled with something like respect for his opponent's tactics. "So we have an unexpected free evening in Paris," she ventured, checking his schedule. "First time in 3 weeks you've had more than an hour unscheduled." Dominic loosened his tie, a rare gesture of relaxation. "Have you been keeping track of my free time, Ms. Reed? It's my job to know your schedule better than you do." Emma closed her laptop. "Your last physical indicated elevated stress levels. Dr. Wexler recommended regular breaks." "You read my medical reports?" For once, Dominic seemed caught off guard. "You gave me access to all your files." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Did you think I wouldn't be thorough?" A slow smile spread across Dominic's face. Genuine amusement, not his usual calculated charm. "Touche." He walked to the window, gazing out at the Parisian skyline bathed in late afternoon sunlight. "Have you ever been to Paris before, Emma?" "No. Books have been my only form of travel." He turned, decision made. "Get your coat." "Excuse me?" "We're taking the evening off, both of us." He was already texting his driver. "You've been in Paris for 3 days and seen nothing but the inside of this building. That's practically criminal. But the quarterly reports can wait until tomorrow." He held her gaze. "Consider it a work necessity. I need my assistant functioning at peak efficiency. That requires occasional maintenance. I'm not one of your sports cars, Dominic." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "No, you're considerably more complex and valuable. Now coat. 5 minutes." 90 minutes later, Emma found herself on a private boat cruising the Seine as sunset painted the city gold. Dominic had been surprisingly knowledgeable about architecture, pointing out details she would have missed. "You're full of surprises," she admitted, sipping champagne that probably cost more than a month's rent at her old apartment. "How so?" he asked, his usual intensity softened by the golden hour light. "I expected you to have a driver point out landmarks while you worked." On your phone, Dominic leaned against the railing beside her. "I make it a point to understand the cities where I do business. Paris has particular significance." "Another strategic acquisition?" The champagne had loosened her tongue. "Something like that." His gaze grew distant. "My mother was French. Parisian, actually. This was her favorite view, the Pont Neuf at sunset." Emma stilled. In 3 weeks, this was the first personal detail he'd voluntarily shared. "Was? She's dead. Cancer. I was 14. He said it matter-of-factly, but Emma caught the slight tightening of his jaw. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "My mother, too. Pancreatic." Dominic nodded, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "Is that why you recognize the oncologist reports in my files? Personal experience?" "Yes. I became an expert on experimental treatments, clinical trials, anything that might have helped." Emma swallowed hard. "Nothing did. Sometimes nothing can." His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. The boat rounded a bend in the river, and suddenly the Eiffel Tower loomed before them, beginning its evening light show. "It's ridiculous, really," Dominic said unexpectedly. "A completely impractical structure built solely to impress." Emma smiled. "Yet beautiful. Sometimes impractical things have the most value. A bookshop owner's daughter philosophy." But he said it with warmth rather than dismissal. As darkness fell fully, they disembarked, and Dominic led her to a tiny restaurant hidden on a side street. No reservation needed. The elderly proprietor embraced him like family. "Dominique, enfin tu reviens." The old man kissed both his cheeks. "Henri, c'est bon de te voir." Dominique returned the embrace with surprising ease. "Emma, this is Henri. He knew my mother. Makes the best bouillabaisse in Paris." The evening unfolded in a bubble outside of time. Simple food that outshone any of the Michelin-starred restaurants they'd visited for business. Wine served in mismatched glasses, and stories. Henri shared tales of a young Dominic visiting, with his mother, proudly speaking French with an atrocious accent. Now his accent, it is only somewhat terrible. Henri winked at Emma. For the first time, Emma saw Dominic laugh without restraint, head thrown back, eyes crinkled shut. The transformation was startling. Walking back to the hotel under a canopy of stars, a comfortable silence between them, Emma realized with alarm that her carefully constructed walls were developing dangerous cracks. This Dominic, the one who remembered architectural details and embraced old men who'd known his mother, was far more dangerous to her heart than the cold businessman. "Thank you," she said as they reached the hotel, "for showing me Paris. Thank you for reminding me to see it." His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. As they parted in the hotel corridor, Dominic paused. "Emma, how is your father? I realized I haven't asked." "Better. The new treatment is working." She tilted her head. "I thought you'd be monitoring the situation." "I am, but I wanted to hear it from you." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. A recognition, perhaps, of shared loss and unexpected, common ground. "Good night, Dominic." "Good night, Emma." As her door closed, Emma leaned against it, heart racing. This evening had veered dangerously off script. The man who had designed a contract to essentially own her time had just given her a glimpse of his soul, and that was far more terrifying than his arrogance had ever been. 2 months after Paris, Emma stood in Dominic's Tokyo penthouse, triple-checking. Preparations for that evening's crucial negotiation dinner. The merger with Tanaka Industries represented months of work and billions in potential revenue. The florist substituted peonies for the requested cherry blossoms, she muttered, making a note. Mr. Tanaka considers them symbols of wealth without refinement. Should I be concerned that you know the floral preferences of my business partners better than I do? Dominic appeared in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks. Emma smiled without looking up from her tablet. That's literally my job, and you're wearing the wrong tie. Dominic glanced down at his perfectly acceptable navy silk tie. Excuse me? Mr. Tanaka's daughter recently designed a line of accessories in that exact shade of blue. Wearing it could be interpreted as either a calculated compliment or a subtle mockery. Emma moved to the bedroom, returning with a different tie. This one signals respect without sycophancy. Their fingers brushed as she handed him the tie. After Paris, these momentary contacts had become charged with unspoken awareness. What would I do without you? Dominic asked quietly. Offend Japanese industrialists with inappropriate flora and neckwear, apparently. Emma's tone was light, but her pulse quickened at his proximity. The evening proceeded flawlessly, conversations flowing, cultural nuances respected, the perfect balance between business formality and personal connection. Emma facilitated smoothly from the background, stepping in with precisely the right comment or clarification when needed. When the Tanakas departed, Dominic's legal team exchanged triumphant glances. The merger was as good as done. Champagne, Dominic announced, loosening his carefully selected tie. We're celebrating. Later, as Tokyo's lights glittered below them, Emma found herself alone with Dominic on the penthouse terrace. The rest of the team had departed, leaving behind empty champagne bottles and the lingering energy of success. To 6 months, Dominic raised his glass toward Emma. Halfway through our contract, and you've exceeded every expectation. Emma clinked her glass against his. Is that an actual compliment, Mr. Thorne? Don't sound so shocked. His eyes crinkled at the corners, the genuine smile she'd first seen in Paris, and now occasionally caught glimpses of. You've transformed. My operations. Harrison reviewed the quarterly numbers. Efficiency up 23% since you came aboard. Careful, or I'll demand a performance bonus, she teased. You deserve it. His tone shifted from playful to sincere. Emma, I'm serious. You've become indispensable. The word hung in the air between them. Indispensable. Not just useful or efficient or profitable. Necessary. It's just good business, she deflected, suddenly uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. Is it? Dominic set down his glass and moved closer. Is that all this is? Emma's heart thundered in her chest. Dominic. 6 months ago, I saw you as a solution to a staffing problem. An interesting diversion with unexpected skills. His voice dropped lower. Now I find myself inventing reasons to keep you in meetings where your presence isn't strictly required, creating business in cities I think you'd enjoy seeing. I canceled 3 appointments in Kyoto next week, he continued as, if compelled to confess. Because you mentioned wanting to see the temples during cherry blossom season. Emma stared at him, speechless. Dominic Thorne, who scheduled bathroom breaks with military precision, had rearranged his calendar for her passing wish. This is inappropriate, she finally managed. I work for you. A temporary arrangement, he reminded her, with an expiration date. A contractual obligation, she countered, with clear boundaries. Boundaries that have been blurring since Paris. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something uniquely him. Tell me I'm wrong. Emma couldn't lie. Not to him, not to herself. Something had been building between them, in shared glances over conference tables, in late-night strategy sessions, in the way he now automatically ordered her coffee exactly as she liked it. "You're my boss," she whispered. A final defense. "For 6 more months." His fingers brushed her cheek. And then I returned to my life. My father's bookstore. My plans. Plans change. His eyes searched hers. People change. Emma thought of the arrogant man who had calculated her father's debt to the penny, who had crafted a contract to essentially own her time. She thought of the Dominic who now texted her father directly about rare first editions he'd discovered, who remembered how she took her tea, who had shown her Paris through his mother's eyes. "I can't," she began, but the protest died as his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. When she didn't pull away, it deepened, becoming something urgent and inevitable. Emma's hands found their way to his shoulders, then his hair, as years of carefully maintained control crumbled for both of them. When they finally broke apart, breathless, reality came crashing back. "This complicates everything," Emma whispered against his shoulder. "I excel at complications." His fingers traced patterns on her back. "Emma, The penthouse phone rang, shattering the moment. Dominic reluctantly answered, his expression shifting from annoyance to concern. "When? How bad?" His eyes found Emma's. "Yes, she's here. We'll return immediately." Fear gripped Emma's heart. "What is it?" "Your father," Dominic said gently. "He's had a setback. The doctors say it's not critical, but I need to go home." Emma was already moving, mind shifting to logistics, flights, arrangements. "The jet is being prepared." Dominic caught her hand. "We'll be in New York by morning." "We? Did you think I'd send you alone?" His tone made it clear the question wasn't even worth asking. As they rushed to pack, Emma's mind spun with contradictions. The contractual boundaries between them had irrevocably shifted, but in this crisis, she found herself profoundly grateful not to face it alone. And that realization terrified her more than any kiss ever could. The calendar on Emma's desk showed. The date circled in red, exactly 1 year since she had signed Dominic's contract. Tomorrow, she would be free of her obligation, free to return to her old life, if such a thing were still possible. The past 6 months had transformed everything. After her father's health scare, which thankfully proved manageable with adjusted treatment, Dominic had insisted on moving their base of operations to New York. His London and Tokyo executives complained bitterly about video conferences at inconvenient hours, but Dominic remained unmoved. "Your father needs you nearby," he had stated, simply. Not a question or suggestion, a recognition of what mattered. Their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Professional boundaries maintained during working hours, but evenings and weekends spent exploring. A connection that deepened with each passing day. Emma discovered the man behind the Billionaire. Dominic, who woke early to swim laps before dawn, who had a weakness for terrible sci-fi movies, who visited his mother's grave on her birthday with white lilies and poetry. In turn, Dominic discovered Emma beyond the efficient assistant. Her quirky sense of humor, her passionate defense of underappreciated authors, her ability to find beauty in ordinary moments. They had agreed not to discuss the contract's end date. The subject hung between them, unaddressed, but ever present. Now, as Emma organized the final reports of her tenure, Dominic appeared in the doorway of her office, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Dinner tonight?" he asked, hands in his pockets, a gesture she now recognized as nervousness. "I promised Dad I'd help inventory the new rare books collection." The bookstore had flourished over the past year, rebuilt and revitalized with her father's renewed health and Dominic's discreet financial guidance. "Tomorrow, maybe?" Something flickered across Dominic's face. "Tomorrow you'll be a free woman." So they were finally acknowledging it. Emma set down her tablet. "Is that what you think? That I've been your prisoner?" Contractually obligated, he corrected, his expression carefully neutral. There's a difference. Is there? Emma stood, moving around her desk to face him directly. Because I've been wondering if that's how you see me, an obligation fulfilled, a contract completed. Emma? I need to know, Dominic. What happens when the clock strikes midnight and my employment agreement expires? Do I turn back into a pumpkin? Does all of this... She gestured between them. Disappear? Dominic ran a hand through his hair. Another, till she'd learned to read. Vulnerability beneath the controlled exterior. That depends on you, he said finally. I've arranged several possibilities. Emma raised an eyebrow. Contingency plans for my departure? How romantic. A smile tugged at his lips despite the tension. Actually, yes. He produced an envelope from his jacket. Option 1. A glowing recommendation and connections to the top publishing houses in the country. Your career would be fast-tracked beyond what most people achieve in a decade. Emma took the envelope, her heart sinking despite the generosity of the offer. A golden parachute. Option 2. Dominic continued, producing a second envelope. Involves a position as Chief Operations Officer for the Thorn Foundation. Completely separate from my corporate structure. You'd oversee charitable initiatives, educational grants, cultural preservation, including a substantial endowment for independent bookstores nationwide. Emma blinked, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the offer. And you'd be my board chairman. Quarterly meetings, minimal overlap. His eyes held hers. If professional distance is what you want. The implication hung in the air between them. And option 3? Emma asked softly. Dominic reached into his pocket one last time, but instead of an envelope, he withdrew a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught. Dominic. Option 3 isn't a job offer, he said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. He opened the box, revealing not a diamond ring as she'd feared, but a simple key. It's an invitation to stay, not as my employee, but as my partner. A key to your penthouse? Emma asked, confused. A key to our home, he corrected. If you want it to be. He took a breath. I've never needed anyone before you, Emma. Never wanted to share my life, my decisions, my future. But this year has shown me what I was missing. Emma stared at the key, emotions churning. When I signed your contract, I thought I was selling a year of my life to save my father's business. I never expected... Neither did I. Dominic set the key box on her desk and took her hands. I thought I was acquiring an efficient assistant. Instead, I found the one person who sees beyond the CEO, who challenges me, who makes me better. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. I love you, Emma Reed. No contracts, no obligations, just a choice. Emma's eyes filled with tears. The arrogant billionaire falls for the bookshop girl? That's rather cliché, don't you think? Terribly, he agreed, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Almost as cliché as the independent woman who refuses to admit she's fallen for her boss. Former boss, she corrected, stepping closer. As of tomorrow. So, what will it be, Emma? Publishing career? Foundation leadership, or you, she said simply. Just you. Their kiss was different from any they'd shared before, not rushed or hidden or complicated by professional boundaries. Just two people who had found each other against impossible odds, choosing a future together. Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand to her father's bookstore, Emma paused beneath the restored vintage sign. Reed's Rare Books, where stories find their people. You know, she said thoughtfully, I never actually thanked you. Dominic looked puzzled. For what? For nearly crashing into our sign a year ago. Best near accident of my life. Dominic laughed, pulling her close. I think that deserves a proper celebration. 1 year since the collision that changed everything. Inside the bookstore, Emma's father looked up from his inventory, eyes twinkling as he observed their clasped hands and matching smiles. "About time you two made it official," he remarked, setting aside his reading glasses. "Dominic already asked for my blessing weeks ago." "Dad!" Emma exclaimed. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. Who do you think helped him pick out that key?" He winked at Dominic. "Though I still think my suggestion was better." "One step at a time, George," Dominic said, his arm tightening around Emma's waist. "We have a lifetime for the rest." As her father embraced them both, Emma realized that the contract that had once seemed like a prison sentence had actually been the key to freedom. Freedom to discover love in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. The billionaire and the bookshop girl. A contract signed in desperation had evolved into a promise made in love, and that was a story worth keeping. The sound of shattering glass pierced through the morning bustle of Blackwood Tower's grand lobby. Vivian Hayes froze mid-step, coffee carafe suspended in air, watching in horror as Sebastian Thorne, billionaire tech mogul and her boss's boss's boss, stood covered in scalding espresso. I'm so sorry, Mr. Thorne," Vivian stammered, frantically grabbing napkins from her service cart. The entire lobby had gone silent, smartphones raised to capture the catastrophe. Sebastian Thorne, infamous for his volcanic temper, looked down at his ruined $3,000 suit with an unreadable expression. At 34, he was the youngest CEO to grace the cover of Fortune magazine 3 years running, and now wore a cappuccino tie thanks to her clumsiness. "Your name?" His voice was dangerously soft. "Vivian Hayes, sir, from the executive dining service." She blotted ineffectually at his jacket, mortified. To everyone's shock, Sebastian's stern face cracked into a smile. Then, inexplicably, he started laughing. Not the polite chuckle of a magnanimous boss, but genuine, shoulders-shaking laughter. "Perfect timing, Ms. Hayes," he said, pulling her aside as whispers erupted around them. "My office, 10 minutes. Convinced she was about to be fired in spectacular fashion, Vivian spent those 10 minutes in the employee restroom, trying to compose herself. Her reflection showed a woman on the edge, warm brown skin flushed with embarrassment, curly hair escaping its professional bun, and amber eyes wide with panic. At precisely the 10-minute mark, she stood outside the imposing double doors of the penthouse office suite, heart hammering against her ribs. "Ms. Hayes," Sebastian greeted her when his assistant ushered her in. He'd changed into a fresh suit, but kept the same enigmatic smile. "Please sit." The office was minimalist elegance, all steel, glass, and breathtaking views of the city. Much like the man himself. "I have a proposition for you," he said, leaning forward. "Sir, if this is about the dry cleaning bill, I need a wife." Vivian blinked. "I don't think HR would approve of that hiring practice." Sebastian's laugh was rich and unexpected. "Not a real wife, a pretend one, for 1 month." He explained his dilemma with surprising candor. His grandmother, Eleonora Thorne, family matriarch and majority shareholder of Thorne Enterprises, was flying in from Europe. She was old-fashioned and believed a settled family man made the best business leader. She was also terminally ill. "She's been after me to find the one for years," Sebastian sighed, "and now she's coming for one last visit." "So you want to lie to your dying grandmother?" Vivian asked before she could stop herself. His eyes, a startling shade of gray, narrowed. "I want to give her peace of mind in her final days. She needs to believe the family legacy is secure. And you picked me because you clearly aren't intimidated by me," he said dryly. "And after your performance this morning, the entire building already thinks there's something between us. The photos are trending on social media." On cue, her phone buzzed with notifications. 1 month. Play the devoted wife. Attend some events. Meet my grandmother. Then we separate amicably after she returns to Europe. He slid a contract across the desk. In return, $500,000. Vivian's mind raced. Her younger sister's medical school tuition, her mother's mortgage, her own crushing student debt. Why me? She pressed. You could hire an actress. Too risky. Actresses talk. You, on the other hand, have a spotless employee record and family, obligations that would benefit from discretion and compensation. The fact that he knew about her family sent a chill down her spine. You investigated me in 10 minutes? I'm efficient. He gestured to the contract. Do we have a deal, Ms. Hayes? Vivian stared at the document, her future hanging in the balance. It was madness. It was the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered. One condition, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. I keep my job after this is over. No matter what. A smile played at the corner of his mouth. You drive a hard bargain for someone who just assaulted me with coffee. Do we have a deal, Mr. Thorne? Sebastian extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Thorne. As their hands clasped, neither recognized the spark between them as anything more than static electricity from the plush carpet. Neither could have predicted how completely this charade would transform their lives. Outside the office windows, storm clouds gathered over the city. No, no, no. Sebastian pinched the bridge of his nose. My grandmother will never believe. We're in love if you flinch every time I touch you. 3 days had passed since Vivian signed the contract, and they were in Sebastian's penthouse apartment, undergoing what he called marital training. The sprawling residence occupied the top 2 floors of an exclusive building downtown, all sleek surfaces and museum-worthy art pieces that probably cost more than her entire life. I'm trying, Vivian protested, consciously relaxing her shoulders as Sebastian's arm slid around her waist again. It's just that you smell like money. Is that a complaint? One dark eyebrow arched upward. It's an observation. Designer cologne, laundered shirts, and, I don't know, power? She gestured vaguely. It's intimidating. Sebastian's laugh was unexpected. You're the first person to ever describe my scent as power. Most people just ask what cologne I wear. I'm not most people, Vivian replied, and this isn't most situations. His eyes lingered on her face a moment too long. No, it certainly isn't. Sebastian's personal assistant, Margot Klein, the only other person privy to their arrangement, cleared her throat from across the room. Perhaps we should review the backstory again. Their fabricated love story was meticulously crafted. They'd been secretly dating for 10 months after meeting when Vivienne served at a private executive dinner. They'd kept their relationship quiet due to company policy, but had married in a private ceremony last month. The coffee incident was their first public outing. Quiz me, Vivian challenged, stepping away from Sebastian's unsettling proximity. Sebastian's favorite food, Margot fired. Spaghetti carbonara, but only the way his Italian grandmother makes it. He hates when restaurants add cream. Allergies? Penicillin and emotional vulnerability, Vivian answered with a straight face. Sebastian coughed to hide a laugh while Margot continued. Anniversary date? March 12th. First kiss was on the rooftop garden after everyone left the company Christmas party. Impressive. Sebastian nodded. What about you? Tell me something. I should know about my wife. Vivian considered this. I sing in the shower, but only 90s R&B. I'm terrified of heights but love roller coasters, which makes no sense. I have a weakness for historical romance novels but would die before admitting it publicly. She paused. Well, until now. Something flickered in Sebastian's expression. Amusement, perhaps, or curiosity. Noted. Anything else I should know before grandmother arrives tomorrow? Vivian hesitated before asking, Why haven't you actually gotten married? For real, I mean. When his expression darkened, she added, "Your grandmother will ask. I should know the answer." A tense silence stretched between them before Sebastian spoke. "Tell her I was waiting for the right woman. Someone real in a world of artifice." "Is that the truth?" Vivian asked softly. "No," he replied, turning to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "The truth is, I watched my parents destroy each other with a love that turned toxic. I decided business was safer." The raw honesty surprised them both. Margot discreetly excused herself, leaving them alone in a silence that felt suddenly weighted. "You should see your new wardrobe," Sebastian said abruptly, gesturing toward the guest wing. "My grandmother has exacting standards." The walk-in closet attached to her temporary bedroom was larger than her entire apartment. Inside hung designer clothes with price tags that made her dizzy. "I can't wear these," she protested, fingering a silk dress that probably cost 3 months' salary. "You can and will," Sebastian insisted. "Eleonora Thorne's daughter-in-law wouldn't be caught dead in department store clothing." Vivian bristled. "Is there something wrong with how I dress?" "Not at all," he replied, his eyes traveling down her simple blouse and pencil skirt in a way that made her cheeks warm. "But this isn't about you or me. It's about playing parts in a production my grandmother will believe." "Fine," she conceded. "But I draw the line at changing my hair or how I speak." Sebastian stepped closer, reaching out to tuck a stray curl behind her ear. The casual intimacy of the gesture froze her in place. "I wouldn't dream of it," he murmured. "Your authenticity is what makes this believable." His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Sebastian checked it and frowned. Change of plans. Grandmother's flight landed early. She'll be here in an hour. Panic flashed across Vivian's face. "But we're not ready. We haven't practiced enough." "Then I guess we'll have to improvise," Sebastian said, reaching for her hand and giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Just remember, for the next month you're the woman who accomplished the impossible." "What's that?" she asked. A genuine smile softened his features, transforming him from intimidating CEO to someone altogether more dangerous to her equilibrium, making Sebastian Thorne fall madly in love. As he left to prepare for his grandmother's arrival, Vivian stared at her reflection in the closet's mirrored door. The woman who looked back wore an expression of dawning comprehension. This charade might cost her more than she'd bargained for. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting the penthouse in golden light, illuminating everything except the shadow of doubt growing in Vivian's heart. Eleonora Thorne was not what Vivian expected. Instead of a frail, elderly woman, she encountered a formidable, silver-haired dynamo who swept into the penthouse with the energy of someone half her supposed age. Her piercing blue eyes, so like Sebastian's, missed nothing as she surveyed her grandson's home. "Darling Sebastian," she said in a lightly accented voice, kissing both his cheeks. "You look tired. Is married life so exhausting already?" Sebastian laughed, wrapping an arm around Vivian's waist with practiced ease. "On the contrary, grandmother, I've never been happier." Eleonora turned her discerning gaze to Vivian. "So this is the woman who finally captured the uncatchable heart." "Eleonora," Vivian said with a gracious smile, extending her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." The matriarch ignored the hand and instead pulled Vivian into a surprisingly strong embrace. "We are family now. Call me Nonna, as Sebastian does." She stepped back, holding Vivian at arm's length. "Let me look at you." Vivian felt like a prize mare being assessed at auction as Eleonora examined her from head to toe. "Beautiful, yes, but many women are beautiful," Eleonora declared. "Tell me, what do you see in my grandson that made you choose him?" Sebastian tensed beside her, but Vivian barely hesitated. His eyes, she answered truthfully. They reveal what he tries to hide. And what is that? Eleonora pressed. That, beneath the businessman, is a man who cares deeply, who carries the weight of responsibility with grace, and who values loyalty above all else. The words came easily, because surprisingly, they were true. Something in Eleonora's expression softened. A perceptive woman. Excellent. She turned to Sebastian. I approve, so far. As they settled in the living room for aperitifs, Vivian realized this would be harder than she'd imagined. Not the pretending, but preventing herself from being drawn into the fantasy they were creating. Tell me about your wedding, Eleonora requested, accepting a glass of Amaro from Sebastian. I'm still hurt you didn't wait for me. Sebastian and Vivian exchanged glances. They'd rehearsed this. It was impulsive, Sebastian explained. We were at my lake house, and the sunset was perfect. We couldn't wait another day, Vivian interjected, placing her hand over Sebastian's. When you know, you know. The justice of the peace was a friend, Sebastian continued. Just us, the witness, and the water. Vivian wore a simple white dress with wildflowers in her hair. The detail surprised her. They hadn't discussed that specific element. Very romantic, Eleonora said approvingly, though highly inconvenient for the family. We must have a proper reception while I'm here. That's not necessary. Sebastian began. It's decided, Eleonora declared with the conviction of someone unaccustomed to hearing no. Nothing extravagant, just 200 of our closest friends and family. Vivian choked on her drink. Are you all right, dear? Eleonora asked. Fine, Vivian managed. 200 seems intimate. Eleonora laughed, a rich, melodic sound remarkably similar to Sebastian's. For a Thorn celebration, absolutely. She fixed her grandson with a pointed look. The board members will expect invitations, of course. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Grandmother, Vivian and I are still enjoying our privacy. Nonsense. The photos of your coffee incident are already everywhere. The secret is out. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Besides, I've already spoken with your event planner. Saturday next. The botanical gardens have been reserved. Vivian felt Sebastian's hand tighten around hers. This was not part of their agreement. Sebastian tells me you work at Thorn Enterprises, Eleonora continued, smoothly changing subjects. Yes, in hospitality services, Vivian confirmed. Not anymore, Sebastian interjected. Vivian has graciously agreed to step back from her role to focus on our charitable foundation. Another detail they hadn't discussed. Vivian shot him a questioning look. The Thorn Foundation, he elaborated, giving her hand a warning squeeze. Supporting educational initiatives for underprivileged children. Vivian's passion project. Eleonora beamed. Perfect. A Thorn spouse must have purpose beyond decoration. I knew you'd choose wisely, Sebastian. As the evening progressed, Vivian was surprised by how easily she and Sebastian fell into their roles. His hand on the small of her back felt natural. The way he anticipated her preferences, pouring her sparkling water with lime instead of lemon, passing her the olives from his plate because he'd noticed she loved them, seemed so genuine that sometimes she forgot they were pretending. After dinner, Eleonora excused herself, claiming travel fatigue. Don't think you're escaping the full interrogation, she warned good-naturedly. I've only just begun. When they were alone, Sebastian collapsed onto the sofa, loosening his tie. You were magnificent, he said with genuine admiration. Even I almost believed we were madly in love. You weren't so bad yourself, Vivian replied, kicking off her heels and curling into the opposite end of the couch. Though you might have warned me about the foundation and the reception. Improvisation, he shrugged. Though I am sorry about the reception. We can get out of it somehow. It's fine, she assured him. All part of the job. She hesitated before adding, Your grandmother is remarkable. A shadow crossed Sebastian's face. Yes, she is, which makes this deception all the more necessary, Vivian finished for him. You're giving her what she needs. They sat in comfortable silence until Sebastian asked, Did you mean what you said? About my eyes? Vivian felt heat rise to her cheeks. I had to be convincing. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Well, it worked. I think she's completely taken with you. The feeling is mutual, Vivian admitted. I see where you get your intensity. Sebastian smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. Get some rest, Mrs. Thorne. Something tells me grandmother has a full agenda planned for tomorrow. As Vivian retreated to her room, she found herself lingering in the doorway, watching Sebastian pour a nightcap, his profile illuminated by the city lights beyond the windows. For a moment, just a breath, she wondered what it would be like if this weren't pretend. The thought terrified her more than any contract ever could. Mrs. Thorne, the board is requesting your input on the educational initiative. Proposal. Vivian stared blankly at the executive assistant who had appeared at her elbow during the Thorne Foundation's emergency planning meeting. 1 week into the charade, and she found herself actually running the charitable organization Sebastian had invented on the spot. I'll be right there, she promised, gathering her notes. What had started as a fiction had somehow morphed into reality when Sebastian casually mentioned at breakfast 3 days ago that he'd established the foundation with a $50 million endowment. You did what? She'd sputtered, coffee mug suspended halfway to her lips. Well, we couldn't very well lie to my grandmother about it, he'd replied with maddening calm. Besides, it's a good tax write-off. Now she navigated the gleaming corridors of Thorne Tower with the confidence of someone who belonged there, nodding at executives who a fortnight ago wouldn't have given her a second glance. Amazing what a diamond the size of a quail egg on her left hand could accomplish. The boardroom fell silent as she entered. 12 impeccably dressed men and women regarded her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed skepticism. Mrs. Thorne, Victor Hargrove, Sebastian's right-hand man, greeted her. We were just discussing the Foundation's focus areas. Education, arts access, and medical research, Vivian stated firmly, taking the empty seat beside Sebastian. They hadn't discussed this, but if she was playing a role, she might as well make it meaningful. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. I thought we agreed on education exclusively. Diversification creates greater impact, she countered smoothly. Art programs are consistently underfunded in public schools, and medical research grants would honor your grandmother's history as a pioneering woman in medicine. A slow smile spread across Sebastian's face. You've given this considerable thought. I take my responsibilities seriously, she replied, holding his gaze. Even the fake ones, her eyes seemed to say. The board members exchanged glances. This was clearly not the trophy wife some had anticipated. As the meeting progressed, Vivian found herself genuinely engaged in the discussion. Her background in service had taught her more about people's needs than anyone in the room seemed to expect. When the meeting adjourned, several board members lingered to speak with her directly. You've married a formidable woman, Sebastian, Victor commented as they gathered their materials. Don't I know it? Sebastian replied, his hand finding the small of her back in what had become a familiar gesture. In the elevator descending to the lobby, Sebastian kept his voice low. You surprised me in there. Good surprised or bad surprised? Impressed surprised, he amended, though now we'll actually have to follow through on those initiatives. Is that a problem? She challenged. His expression softened. No. Actually, it's the most worthwhile thing Thorne Enterprises has done in years. The elevator doors opened, and instantly they were surrounded by a flurry of camera flashes. Mr. Thorne, when did you get married? Mrs. Thorne, was it love at first sight? Sebastian, is it true you're stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on family life? Sebastian's arm tightened protectively around Vivienne as security guards created a path through the reporters. We appreciate your interest in our happiness, Sebastian told the crowd with practiced charm. But we request privacy as we enjoy this special time. Just one photo, a persistent reporter called. Give us something for the society pages. Sebastian glanced at Vivienne, a silent question in his eyes. She gave a subtle nod. In one fluid motion, he turned her toward him, cradled her face in his hands, and kissed her. The world seemed to stop. His lips were warm, gentle but insistent, and for a heartbeat, Vivienne forgot the cameras, the contract, the charade. Her hands found his chest, steadying herself against the unexpected wave of desire that crashed through her. When they parted, the cameras went wild. That should satisfy them, Sebastian murmured against her ear, leading her through the chaos to the waiting car. Inside the private sanctuary of his luxury sedan, Vivienne tried to calm her racing heart. Sorry about that, Sebastian said, loosening his tie. They weren't going to back off without something dramatic. It's fine, she managed, hating how breathless she sounded. All part of the performance, right? Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? Or was she projecting her own confusing emotions? Right, he agreed, turning to look out the window. Just a performance. The car pulled away from the curb, taking them to yet another event, the opera gala where Eleonora would be introducing her new granddaughter-in-law to New York society. Vivienne welcomed the distraction of preparing her thoughts for another round of scrutiny. That evening, draped in a midnight blue gown that made her feel like a goddess, Vivienne stood at Sebastian's side greeting an endless parade of socialites, business associates, and family friends. Eleonora beamed with pride, introducing her as the woman who finally captured our Sebastian's heart. How did you know he was the one? A designer-clad socialite asked with barely concealed envy. Vivienne glanced at Sebastian, who was deep in conversation across the room, but somehow sensed her gaze and looked up, giving her a private smile that sent warmth cascading through her chest. I didn't plan to fall in love with him, Vivienne answered truthfully. It just happened. One day I looked at him and couldn't imagine my life without him in it. The words felt dangerously honest. Later, as Sebastian guided her around the dance floor with surprising grace, Vivienne allowed herself to sink into the fantasy for just one night. His hand firm at her waist, his cheek occasionally brushing against her temple, the subtle scent of his cologne. All of it felt right in a way that terrified her. You're thinking too loudly, Sebastian murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Just wondering what happens when the music stops, she replied softly. His arm tightened around her waist. Then we bow gracefully and exit the stage. The reminder of their arrangement's temporary nature stung more than it should have. Of course, she agreed. After all, this is just business, isn't it? Sebastian missed a step, so slight that only she noticed, before recovering seamlessly. Is that all it is to you? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. Before she could answer, Eleonora appeared at their side, eyes bright with approval. You too are the picture of love, she declared. It does my heart good to see it. As Vivienne met Sebastian's questioning gaze over his grandmother's shoulder, she realized with startling clarity that she was in grave danger of forgetting this was all an act, and the curtain would fall in exactly 3 more weeks. The botanical gardens transformed into an enchanted wonderland under Eleonora's exacting vision. Crystal chandeliers hung from ancient oak trees, casting prismatic light over the reception, celebrating Sebastian and Vivienne's marriage. White, roses and orchids adorned every surface, their delicate fragrance perfuming the evening air. "Your grandmother doesn't understand the concept of small," Vivian whispered to Sebastian as they greeted what felt like the 1,000th guest. "Thorns don't do anything halfway," he replied, his hand resting comfortably at the small of her back. "Especially love." The word hung between them, loaded with unspoken complications. 2 weeks had passed since that kiss outside Thorn Tower, and neither had mentioned it. Instead, they'd fallen into a domestic rhythm that felt alarmingly natural. Morning coffee on the terrace, working side by side on foundation proposals, evening debriefs about their days that stretched into hours of conversation about everything and nothing. "You look stunning," Sebastian said softly, his eyes traveling appreciatively over the ivory gown Eleonora had insisted was perfect for a bride's reception. The delicate lace bodice gave way to flowing silk that made Vivian feel like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she returned with a smile, straightening his bow tie. The gesture was intimate, wifely, and she caught herself too late. Something shifted in Sebastian's expression, a softening around the eyes, a vulnerability she rarely glimpsed. "Dance with me?" he asked, taking her hand before she could answer. On the dance floor, surrounded by New York's elite, Vivian allowed herself to melt into his embrace. The string quartet played a waltz, and Sebastian guided her with confident steps. "Everyone's watching us," she murmured. "Let them," he replied. "They're witnessing what they think is the world's greatest love story." "And what do you think they're seeing?" she dared to ask. His eyes met hers, intense and searching. Two people who fit together in ways neither expected. Before she could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A striking woman in a crimson dress was causing a stir, photographers clustering around her as she made a dramatic entrance. Sebastian's grip on Vivian's waist tightened. "Isabel," he muttered. "Who's Isabel?" Vivian asked, following his gaze. "My ex," he replied grimly. "Also Victor's sister and my former CFO. She wasn't invited." The woman spotted them and began moving purposefully in their direction, her smile predatory. "Sebastian, darling," she purred, air-kissing both his cheeks. "What a magnificent event." She turned to Vivian, assessing her with cool blue eyes. "And you must be the mystery bride I've heard so much about." "Isabel." Sebastian's voice held a warning. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting my brother, of course," she replied innocently. "Victor mentioned the celebration. I couldn't miss witnessing the domestication of New York's most notorious bachelor." Her gaze swept over Vivian again. "Though I must say, you're not his usual type." "That's rather the point," Vivian replied evenly. "Evolution requires change." Sebastian's startled laugh broke the tension. "Isabel, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I should greet the other guests." "Of course," Isabel smiled thinly. "Though I do hope we'll have a chance to chat later, Vivian. I have so many delightful stories about your husband." As they moved away, Vivian felt Sebastian relax slightly. "Sorry about that. Isabel and I have history." "I gathered," Vivian replied. "Serious history?" "We were engaged briefly," he admitted, "until I discovered she was feeding company information to competitors." Vivian's eyes widened. "Corporate espionage? That's dramatic even for your world." "It taught me a valuable lesson about mixing business with pleasure," he said, his expression unreadable. The words stung more than they should have. After all, wasn't that exactly what they were doing? The evening progressed in a blur of congratulations, champagne toasts, and wedding traditions. They cut a magnificent 7-tier cake, Sebastian, carefully feeding Vivian a bite as cameras flashed. They accepted envelopes and extravagant gifts with gracious smiles. They played the besotted couple to perfection. As the reception wound down, Eleonora approached them, happiness radiating from her typically austere features. "My darling boy," she said, embracing Sebastian. "You've made an old woman very happy." She turned to Vivian, taking her hands. "And you, my dear, are everything I could have wished for him. The way you look at each other, it reminds me of how his grandfather and I were." Guilt pierced Vivian's heart. "Thank you for welcoming me into your family," she managed. "Thorns recognize their own," Eleonora replied cryptically. "Now, I'm exhausted and returning to the penthouse. Don't rush home on my account." After she departed, Sebastian led Vivian to a secluded area of the gardens, away from the remaining guests. "Did my grandmother seem odd to you?" he asked, loosening his bow tie. "More emotional than usual," Vivian agreed, leaning against a stone balustrade. The night air carried the scent of jasmine, and fairy lights twinkled in the foliage above them. "But it's been a big night for her." Sebastian nodded, distracted. "She's been taking more medication lately. I'm worried." Vivian touched his arm gently. "Have you asked her about it?" "Thorns don't discuss weakness," he replied with a bitter smile. "Another family tradition." "Maybe it's time to break that one," she suggested softly. He studied her face in the gentle light. "You've changed things around here, you know. Me included." The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. "Sebastian..." "Mrs. Thorne?" a staff member interrupted apologetically. "There's a situation that requires your attention. Something about the gift registry?" Vivian sighed. "I'll be right there." As she turned to go, Sebastian caught her hand. "Save me. A dance when you return?" he asked, and the vulnerability in his question made her heart ache. "Always," she promised, not trusting herself to say more. As she disappeared into the reception tent, Sebastian remained in the garden, staring up at the stars. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, a gift he'd meant to give her tonight. Inside nestled a delicate sapphire pendant that had belonged to his mother, the only piece of jewelry she'd left him that wasn't tainted by bitter memories. He'd planned to thank Vivian for her convincing performance, to acknowledge that their arrangement had exceeded expectations. But something held him back. The growing fear that when their contract ended in a week, he might lose something far more valuable than his grandmother's approval. Across the garden, hidden in shadows, Isabel watched him with calculating eyes, her phone recording the moment of unguarded emotion. One didn't become a corporate spy without developing an instinct for leverage, and Sebastian Thorne's obvious feelings for his supposed wife might be the most valuable currency of all. "You've been avoiding me." Sebastian's voice startled Vivian as she organized grant proposals in the Foundation's newly established office. 3 days had passed since the reception, and she'd invented a mountain of work to minimize their time together. "I've been busy," she corrected, not meeting his eyes. "The Foundation launch is next week." He closed the door behind him, leaning against it. "And coincidentally, our arrangement ends in 4 days." The reminder hung heavy between them. "Yes," she agreed, shuffling papers unnecessarily. "Everything's gone according to plan. Your grandmother is happy. The press has embraced us as the romance of the century, and the board respects your commitment to family values." "Is that all this has been to you? A plan executed successfully?" The edge in his voice finally made her look up. "What else could it be, Sebastian?" she asked quietly. "We had an agreement. I've fulfilled my part. You'll fulfill yours. Business concluded." Something darkened in his expression. "And the Foundation? Will you walk away from that, too?" "You don't need me for that," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "You can hire someone qualified." "Don't give me that." Sebastian crossed the room in 3 long strides. "You are qualified. You've done more in 3 weeks than most executives accomplish in a year. The educational programs you've designed are revolutionary. Then consider it my parting gift, she replied, stepping back to create distance between them. His proximity made clear thinking impossible. Damn it, Vivienne. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. What are you running from? Reality. The word burst from her before she could stop it. This isn't real, Sebastian. The penthouse, the foundation, us. It's all an elaborate production that's about to end. What if it doesn't have to? The question, softly spoken, froze her in place. What? What if this doesn't have to end? He repeated, moving closer. The foundation is real. The work you're doing matters. And what's between us is fiction, she finished for him. A contractual obligation. Is that what that kiss felt like to you? He challenged. An obligation? Heat flooded her cheeks at the memory. That was for the cameras. And when there are no cameras, when it's just us having coffee at sunrise, or working side by side until midnight, or the way you laugh at my terrible jokes that no one else finds funny. His voice grew softer with each example. Is that all pretend too? Sebastian, she whispered, her resolve weakening. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I think we're well past easy, he said with a rueful smile. But before you decide this was all just business, there's something you should know. The office door swung open abruptly. Margot stood there, face tight with worry. Sebastian, it's your grandmother. She's in the hospital. The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor brought back painful memories for Vivienne. Her sister's lengthy treatments, the endless waiting for news, good or bad. She paced the private waiting area while Sebastian spoke with doctors. When he returned, his face was drawn with concern. Heart complications. They're stabilizing her now. Without thinking, Vivienne wrapped her arms around him. She's strong, Sebastian. A fighter. He held her tightly, burying his face in her hair. What if I lose her? Then you'll have had the gift of making her final months happy, she murmured. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hours passed. Corporate soldiers arrived. Victor, board members, legal counsel. But Vivienne remained at Sebastian's side, her hand in his, a quiet source of strength. Near midnight, the doctor finally emerged. Mrs. Thorne is awake and asking for you both. Eleonora looked diminished against the hospital pillows, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. There you are, she said as they entered. Don't look so grim. I'm not dead yet. Sebastian kissed her forehead. And you won't be for a long time if you follow doctor's orders. Bah, she waved dismissively. I've had a good run. Her gaze settled on Vivienne. Come closer, dear. Vivienne approached the bed, taking Eleonora's outstretched hand. You've been good for him, the older woman said. Better than I hoped. He's been good for me too, Vivienne replied honestly. Eleonora's eyes twinkled with unexpected mischief. I should hope so, since I orchestrated the whole thing. Sebastian stiffened. What? Oh, please, Eleonora scoffed. The coffee incident? Do you think it's coincidence that the service cart was placed exactly where someone would round the corner too quickly? She coughed lightly. I may have bribed the facilities manager. Vivienne stared in disbelief. You planned for me to spill coffee on Sebastian? I planned an introduction, Eleonora corrected. The rest was all you two. But why? Sebastian demanded. Because you needed someone real, his grandmother said simply. Someone who would see past the money and the power to the man beneath. She squeezed Vivienne's hand. And she needed someone who would recognize her extraordinary capabilities that were being wasted. How could you possibly know that about me? Vivienne asked, stunned. I've been having lunch in the executive dining room every Thursday for 40 years, dear. I notice things. Eleonora's expression softened. Like how you remembered everyone's preferences without being told. How you treated the cleaning staff with the same respect as the executives. How you looked at my grandson when you thought no one was watching. Sebastian's gaze snapped to Vivienne. You noticed me before? Heat flooded her cheeks. You were hard to miss, she admitted. The contract was clever, Eleonora continued. Very businesslike, very Thorne. She fixed Sebastian with a knowing look. But unnecessary. The feelings were already there, weren't they? On both sides. In the stunned silence that followed, a nurse entered to check Eleonora's vitals. I need to ask you both to step out for a few minutes, she said apologetically. In the hallway, Sebastian and Vivienne faced each other, the revelation hanging between them. Did you know? He asked. About my grandmother's matchmaking? Of course not, she replied. But it doesn't change anything. Our arrangement still ends in 4 days. It changes everything, Sebastian countered, because it means what's between us started before any contract. It was real from the beginning. Sebastian? No, listen to me. He took her hands in. 3 weeks ago, I offered you a business deal. Now I'm offering you something else entirely. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the velvet box she'd glimpsed at the reception. Opening it, revealed not the sapphire pendant he'd originally intended, but a stunning emerald ring. This was my grandmother's, he explained. Given to her by my grandfather when he had nothing but ambition and love to offer. She gave it to me the day after we announced our marriage. Said she knew you were the one. Vivienne's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want our contract to end, he said softly. I'm saying these weeks of pretending to be in love with you have been the happiest of my life, because I haven't been pretending at all. Sebastian, let me finish, he continued. You've changed everything. How I see my company, my responsibility, myself. The foundation isn't a cover story anymore. It's the most meaningful thing I've ever done, and it's meaningless without you. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Vivienne Hayes, will you marry me? For real this time? No contracts, no end dates, no pretending. Tears filled her eyes. You're proposing in a hospital corridor? I'm proposing in the place where I finally realized I can't imagine my life without you, he corrected. Is that a yes? Her heart full to bursting, Vivienne pulled him to his feet and into her arms. Yes, she whispered against his lips. But I have conditions. Name them, he said, sliding the ring onto her finger where the temporary diamond had been. I keep running the foundation, my way, she began. We live part-time in my neighborhood, so you remember how real people live. And, her voice softened, we tell your grandmother the truth. All of it. Sebastian chuckled. I think she already knows more than we do. From her hospital room, Eleonora watched them through the doorway, a satisfied smile on her face. Sometimes, the best business strategy was the oldest one of all. Follow your heart, and the profits would follow. In this case, the profit was seeing her grandson truly happy for the first time in his adult life. As for the terminal illness she'd mentioned, to precipitate this whole affair, well, a little white lie in service of true love was hardly a sin. She'd confess. Eventually, perhaps at their first anniversary party, or maybe when they made her a great-grandmother. After all, what was family for if not to meddle in each other's happiness? Epilogue. 1 year later, Vivienne stood at the podium accepting the Humanitarian of the Year award for the Thorne Foundation's groundbreaking work in educational access. Sebastian watched from the front row, pride evident in his face. They say behind every successful woman is a man who knows when to get out of her way, she joked, earning appreciative laughter. In my case, I found a partner who walks beside me, supporting every step without overshadowing the journey. In the audience, Eleonora, fully recovered from her near-death experience, dabbed at suspiciously convenient tears. Later that night, in their renovated brownstone that balanced luxury with homey comfort, Sebastian pulled Vivian into a dance in their kitchen, no music needed. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Thorne," he murmured against her hair. "Which one?" she teased. "The fake one or the real one?" "Both," he replied. "The contract that brought us together, and the vows that keep us that way." As he dipped her dramatically, making her laugh, Sebastian reflected on how a temporary business arrangement had yielded the most permanent happiness he'd ever known. Some charades, it seemed, revealed more truth than reality ever could.